To lose weight, you must be in a calorie deficit, and the most reliable way to know that you're actually in one is to take the time to properly log and measure your food, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do that. I understand that counting calories can be a very sensitive and tough topic for some. I have been there myself. I have struggled with obsessive and disordered eating and obsessively tracking calories, so I know how difficult it is. So I wanna offer a different way to look at it. The truth of the matter is that all food has calories, whether you're tracking them or not, whether you know how many calories are in them or not, food still has calories. In order to lose weight, you must be in a calorie deficit. The problem is that it is so easy to unintentionally eat more calories than you think you are. I lived that for years. I was scared to track. I was scared I was gonna obsess over it all over again, so I didn't track and I just estimated portion sizes and ate healthy food thinking that I would lose weight, and the scale didn't move. And so I blamed my body for something that wasn't its fault. So try to flip the switch, and instead of obsessing over what you have to cut out and how minimal of calories you can eat, flip the switch and ask yourself, how much food can I possibly eat while still staying in a mild calorie deficit? There's no reason to avoid foods or cut out entire food groups. You can and should eat all foods while losing weight. Just stay in a mild calorie deficit. Nothing is off limits. Taking 5 minutes a day to properly log and measure your food can save you weeks of frustration of trying to figure out why you're not losing weight. I'd rather spend 5 minutes a day taking the time to properly log and measure my food and being 100% certain I was in a calorie deficit than spend weeks eyeballing my portion sizes, not tracking and not seeing results on the scale, and just ending up in frustration and wasting weeks of my time. So with that being said, let's get into it. There are two things you're going to need to properly log and track your food. The first is a food scale. This is nothing fancy. I got it off Amazon. It was $10 and it does the job, but you do need a way to properly weigh and measure your food, so I highly recommend a food scale. The second thing you need is a way to log and actually track your calories. You can do this a number of ways. You can just write it down in a journal if you want, but I recommend getting an app to do it for you. The easier it is to log and weigh your food, the more likely you are to stick to it. And I just found that having an app and using an app makes it 1,000 times easier to actually stick to it and consistently log and weigh my food. I use LoseIt. I've also used MyFitnessPal. Once you know how to log it in an app, they're really all the same. So you can still watch this and understand the methodology of how to log your food in an app without using LoseIt specifically, but I will be showing LoseIt today. There are two ways to go about logging and weighing your food. You can either choose to log your food as you're cooking it, and you can weigh it and then go in the app and log it. And I found that to be a little overwhelming trying to measure things out and log it and cook it at the same time while keeping a baby busy. So a tip I have for you is to log your food for the entire day in the morning or even the night before. Plan out what you're gonna have for each meal, enter it all and log it all. That way when it comes time to eat, all you have to do is weigh out what you already logged and just eat it. It saves a lot of time, it saves a lot of guesswork. So I will be showing you that method today. We're gonna go over how to log it first, and then I'll show you how to weigh it. So let's talk about how to log your food first. Before you even start to log your food, you need to understand what your calorie deficit is. So if you have not yet figured out your calorie deficit, go figure out what that is. And I recommend using a calculator that is not within the app that you're gonna use to track your food. I have found that these apps are a little bit more aggressive and have a much more significant calorie deficit number that is a little bit less sustainable. So go figure out your calorie deficit and just use that number here. Another few things to know about these calorie tracking apps. They often will give you additional calories for your calorie budget based on how active you were for the day. So if you have a fitness watch or your steps on your phone sync with it, it'll show you that you've had some activity level for the day and that you can eat that amount of calories more. Do not do that. Do not add additional calories to your calorie deficit. When you figured out your calorie deficit, it asked you your activity level, and based on your activity level, it gave you a number that is reflective of how active you are. If you're more active, you can eat more calories because you're burning more calories. A mild calorie deficit is only 300 to 500 calories less than your maintenance, and your calorie deficit already includes how active you are. So if you eat your calorie deficit and then eat more calories because this app is telling you burned more calories, you're likely gonna cancel out your calorie deficit and you're not gonna lose weight. So stick to your calorie deficit limit no matter what. If your watch or the app or something tells you burned 300, 400, 500 calories, it's likely overestimating, and you're already accounting for more calories if you're more active within your calorie deficit number. So stick to your calorie deficit number no matter what. Now, I'm gonna get a little specific about LoseIt's interface here, but again, this same methodology applies to any of that. So I'm in LoseIt, and the first thing I want to do is make sure that my calorie deficit number is properly accounted for in here. So in LoseIt, after I set up an account, I'm gonna click on my profile picture, and you can see that there's a budget option. I have it set to custom. I don't want LoseIt populating it for me. I want me to populate it for me based on what I already calculated. So if you haven't done that, you would go in here and you could choose the custom set by you versus the one set by LoseIt. And so I have my calorie deficit to 1,800. In reality, me, when I was in a calorie deficit, I focused on a range of calories. I wanted to eat between 1700 and 1800 calories a day. That made it so easy to stick to, but I want to make sure that my calorie limit is appropriate here, and now it is. So now we're in the main screen and we're gonna go to log. Here is where you're going to log all of your food for the day, and again, I highly recommend doing this before you even eat breakfast. So I know that for my meal this morning, I am going to make a yogurt parfait. I'll show you how to add all of that. So add food, you're gonna add it ingredient by ingredient. I won't be able to search a yogurt parfait and it's gonna know what I ate. I need to take the time to log every ingredient of my breakfast and how much of it I'm going to use. I am not making it right now, I am just logging it. And then when I make it later, I need to measure out exactly what I'm logging. So there are a couple of ways to find the food that you want to log. Again, this is specific to LoseIt, but it can be applied on any of the apps. So if you can see at the top, there's an all, my foods, meals, and recipes. I'm gonna go through all of those. All is the best place to search if this is the first time you're eating this food, if you have not logged it previously, if you're going out to like a fast food place and you wanna look it up, you can search anything here. Like for example, if I wanted to go to Chick-fil-A, I can look up Chick-fil-A and see all of their stuff there. Just one way to search for it. So here is the yogurt I will be logging. I'm gonna show you how I would find this, all of the options. So the first is I can just search for Kirtland Greek yogurt, and I see there's an entry. I always validate to make sure it's correct. So this one has 100 calories per 170 grams. So it looks like that very first entry is correct. Let me show you how else you can find it. If it is something you log pretty regularly, that's where you're gonna go to My Foods. My Foods is gonna log and keep everything that you use regularly and just an easier way for you to find it. So I have Greek yogurt parfaits probably every day. So this is something when I was logging my food, it would show up right here. So I don't have to go search for it. It's already in My Foods because it's something I eat pretty often. My favorite way to find food is to use the barcode scanner. So on the screen in the bottom right, you could see a little barcode. If you pull that up, it'll pull up a scanner and you just scan the barcode of your food and it pulls up everything for you. Sometimes the barcode scanner doesn't work on LoseIt and it doesn't pull up the right food and then I have to manually go find it. But if it has a barcode, 99% of the time I'm gonna scan it and get the information that way. Meals at the top is if you eat the same meals over and over, like the parfait we're gonna make today. It has a couple of ingredients. It's a meal I repeat often. That's when I go into my meals and just relog the exact same breakfast I had yesterday or the exact same lunch. It's not really a recipe because it's not something that has multiple servings. It is just a meal that you ate with a couple of different ingredients. It saves you from having to log everything individually. That is useful if you do repeat meals, which I recommend doing and I did all the time. The last item is recipes, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but there is a way for you to create a recipe of something with multiple ingredients, multiple servings, and store it for you to log later. This isn't really a recipe, the Greek yogurt parfait, it's just a meal. I'm just making it for me. So let's get into logging it. I will scan my Greek yogurt parfait. Now I'm going to log how much of this Greek yogurt I plan to eat later. Another tip I highly recommend is that you log everything in grams. This isn't always an option, at least on LoseIt. Sometimes grams isn't an option. I highly recommend, they have ounces, pounds, teaspoons, all of this good stuff. I highly recommend always weighing and logging everything's in grams. It's the most accurate. The scale that I have has a gram option. I just found it's the most accurate measurement. So I'm gonna log it in grams. I, for the most part, log and eat about a serving size for most everything I eat, but this is where it's so important to take the time to actually measure it out later. If I was logging right here, I was gonna eat 170 grams of Greek yogurt. I have no idea what that looks like in a bowl. So I would just serve myself a bowl and guess, and it could be way over 170 grams or way under. So again, taking the time to log and weigh out is the only way to ensure you are accurately in a calorie deficit and eating what you're logging. So I logged that I'm gonna eat 170 grams of this. I will weigh that out later. I'm gonna continue on with logging what I'm gonna have for this meal. After my yogurt, I like to drizzle it with a little bit of honey. This is the honey I use. We're just showing you. I will search this honey in the all bar and show you what it looks like if you don't have the barcode scanner. So this is the Kirkland Wildflower. Right away, there's one that comes up for Kirtland and it shows Costco. So I'm gonna verify that it's 60 calories per tablespoon, which is exactly what this says as well. If there's no grams on the entry you found, there's often more entries that have more flexibility for the volume and the measurement you're using. So that first one didn't have grams. I just went to the next one, which shows 60 calories per 21 grams. So this one I click on and I can do it in grams. I have made this Greek yogurt parfait probably 1,000 times now. So I know roughly how much honey I put on it and how much I like to put on it. So in this case, I don't want 21 grams. I'm gonna do about 15. This is just personal preference. You will get into a routine of how much of what ingredient you like. It's just what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna measure, when I weigh out the honey, I'm gonna measure 15 grams of honey. So I'm gonna log log that. The next ingredient that I have are just some blueberries. So this doesn't have a container. There is no store information on it. Luckily though, with fruits and vegetables, it's pretty standard across the board. So in this case, I am just gonna search blueberries. I eat blueberries all the time. This is accurate for it. So I love blueberries. I don't know if I have 80 grams in here, but that'll be good to show later. So I'm gonna assume maybe I have 80 grams and I'm gonna log that. And when we weigh it out, we'll see if that's accurate. The last ingredient I am going to log for my Greek yogurt parfait is some granola on top. Here is the brand, and I'm just gonna barcode this one. Even when I barcode it, I always want to make sure that what is showing on the screen matches the back of the bag. I always verify. This one does. Every single time you look at the back of a bag, it should tell you the number of calories per serving, and the serving should always show grams. So it should make it pretty easy for you to be able to measure out in grams and understand how many calories that is. This is again why I highly recommend getting an app, because it does the math for you. Because I made this parfait a million times, I know that I also don't like to use 30 grams of granola, and I'm gonna do it to 15. After I logged those 4 things, I'm gonna hit this check mark at the top right, and now it shows me that this yogurt parfait that I'm gonna make has 268 calories, 20 grams of protein. If I had to eyeball this portion size, I already know there's no way I can measure it to this level of accuracy. I would very likely overestimate these portion sizes and be over by a couple hundred calories without even realizing it. So it is incredibly important not only that you log your food, but that you take the time to weigh it out as well, and we're gonna get into that in just a second. I wanna talk about recipes before we go into how to weigh your food. One of the most common questions I get is, how do I log and track my food if I make a big casserole for my entire family? Do I really have to weigh and measure out each ingredient based on what I ate? The answer is much more simple than you think, thank goodness. LoseIt and MyFitnessPal both have the ability to add a recipe, and you can add in all of the ingredients you use to cook that recipe. You put in how many servings that recipe makes, and then you just log how many servings you make. So it does a lot of the math for you, and it stores the recipe for later, so you can log that recipe anytime you make it in the future and save yourself a ton of time. To do it in LoseIt, you go to your profile and you scroll down to recipes, and you can click the plus button and to create a new recipe. The really cool thing is you can add a recipe that you found online, so you don't even have to enter all the ingredients for those types of recipes. So for that one, you can add it from the web. It'll automatically grab all the ingredients for that recipe for you. I rarely do that, but that is an option if you want it. What I usually do is I just search for ingredients and create a custom recipe from scratch. Once you save it, you add how many servings this makes. This is really important. You have to put in how many servings your recipe is going to make, and then it is your responsibility to measure it out effectively after you cook it. However many servings you put here, that's how many portions you have to make once it's done. And then the same process you just did over here to make that yogurt parfait, you're gonna do for your recipe. You're gonna search for every single ingredient, and you're gonna put the entire amount needed for that recipe, and it'll add it up all for you. If you don't know how many servings that your recipe is gonna make, another thing that you can do is just make the recipe and enter it as 1 serving, and then when you log the food, log how much of your recipe that you made. So here's an example. Here's a recipe that I use quite often. My husband makes the most delicious meat pasta, and he uses a little bit of sour cream, some pasta sauce, some sausage, and the noodles themselves. So we logged one time how much everything was, how much the pasta weighed, how much meat we were putting into it, how much sauce we like to put into it, how much sour cream, and all of that is present here. We logged each ingredient individually, and I put that this was just 1 serving for the recipe because I didn't know how many servings we wanted from it. If you scroll down, it shows how many calories per serving. So because I said this recipe made 1 serving, if I ate that entire bowl of pasta, the entire completed dinner, it would be 3,000 calories. Now, if I wanted to log that recipe, I could go to lunch, and I could go to recipes, and I could go to that meat pasta, and I just have to log how much of that recipe I ate. It was 1 serving, so that I eat 1/4 of it, therefore I ate 0.25, and that's how many calories it made. If I wanted 1/5 of it, I would put 0.2 servings, and you can adjust how much you ate at the time rather than estimating the portion size ahead of time. Here's another example of a recipe I made where I did do the portion size ahead of time and the number of servings. I made these muffins a while ago. I followed a recipe. I knew it would make 12 of them. All of the ingredients that I used to make the batter, and then I measured it out into 12 servings, and it shows you serving for just 1 of those. So you can do it a number of different ways. You can say that your entire recipe makes 1 big serving, and then when you go to measure it out, you just log that you ate a fraction of that serving based on on if you ate half of it or a fourth of it or a fifth of it. Or you could say that this recipe makes however many servings you think it's gonna make and then just log that you ate one of those servings. The important thing is you can log recipes that you make for your whole family one time, put in accurately all the ingredients you used one time, it'll save it for you and you can log it anytime you want. Now that you have a pretty good idea of how to log your food, let's talk about the second half of the equation, which is to weigh and measure exactly what you logged. This is where you're gonna need your food scale. This one was $10. I recommend it. You don't need anything fancy. The first thing you need to do is make sure you zero out your scale. It should show 0 on it. And I'm just gonna show you the units this scale has. It has grams, milliliters, ounces, pounds and ounces, and fluid ounces as well. But I always keep mine on grams. Once you have it set to grams, go ahead and put your plate or bowl on and make sure to zero it out. You're going to zero it out after you add anything new. So I added a plate, going to zero it out. When I add my yogurt, I will zero it out after. It's at 0 grams, now it's time to add my yogurt. I logged that I was going to eat 170 grams of this Greek yogurt. So now I'm just going to measure out 170 grams using my scale. Although I logged I was going to eat 170 grams, I ended up weighing out 181 grams. So I have two options. I can either take out 11 grams and make this equal 170, or I can go back into LoseIt and update my log and reflect that I actually ended up eating 181 grams. And this is what I'm gonna do instead. I'm going to reopen LoseIt. I'm gonna click on the yogurt entry and I'm gonna change it to 181 grams instead. So now I ate 106 calories instead of 100 calories and it reflected the macros accordingly. Now that I have that logged, I'm going to zero it out once again and get ready for my next ingredient, which this time I'm going to be adding honey. I logged that I was going to be eating 15 grams of honey, so that is exactly what I'm going to measure out here. Once again, what I logged is not what I ended up weighing, so I'm once again going to go back into LoseIt and adjust this to reflect only 8 grams instead of the 15 that I initially logged. So you definitely have flexibility when it comes to changing what you logged after the fact. I'm good with this honey, so now I zeroed out and now it's time to add some blueberries here. I said that I was going to eat 80 grams of blueberries and luckily I had much more than that. So once again, I go back into LoseIt, click on blueberries, and I'm going to adjust it from 80 grams to 98 because that's what I ended up weighing out. You have flexibility, you can absolutely adjust what you have previously logged, but if you're trying to stay in a calorie deficit, I would try to stick to what you logged as much as possible. It just keeps it easier. Then we are going to clear the scale one more time and add our final ingredient, which is 15 grams of this granola. I ended up adding a little bit more one final time. I'm going to edit this to say 20 grams instead of the 15. So here is the final product and everything measured is exactly what I logged. So I know without a shadow of a doubt that this yogurt parfait has 292 calories and 22 grams of protein. And I know that if I would have tried to eyeball these portion sizes, I would have been way off and my calories would have been off too. Another tip that I saw that I wish I would have known sooner is that you can also measure directly from the container that your food comes in. So in this case, instead of putting a bowl on and zeroing the scale, you're actually going to put the container on that you want to take the item out of, zero the scale, and whatever you scoop out of, that negative weight, that's what you're going to log. I would use this tip and use this weighing method when I'm doing like sour cream for tacos, for example. Instead of trying to scoop out sour cream and measure how much sour cream I'm putting on a taco, I would just do one big scoop out of the sour cream tub, see how much it goes negative, and log that much sour cream for my dish. So just use this as a way of logging food if you want to. It's totally optional. Like anything, it definitely takes practice getting used to logging and weighing your food before it starts feeling easy. But I promise you, spending that time learning how to do it and taking the time to log and weigh your food every day leaves you with the sense of knowing that you are actually eating what you're logging and that you're actually in a deficit. There's nothing more frustrating than thinking you're in a calorie deficit and blaming your body and your hormones and everything as to why you're not losing weight, when in reality, it's just because you were overestimating your portion sizes, eyeballing portion sizes, and you weren't eating what you're logging and you weren't in a calorie deficit. So take the 5 minutes to log and weigh your food and save yourself weeks of frustration from wondering why you're not losing the weight. Hope this helps.